Hallo? DJ, DJ. Is iedereen binnen? Thing working. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome on behalf of the project. My name is Henk Slager. I'm curator of this project. Also, yeah, the mic is not working, Red. No. Now it's working. Welcome again to the first seminar meeting in the context of the project to seminar. I will briefly introduce this project, tell a little bit about how it came into being before I give the word and the microphone to the moderator of this evening. What is important to know is, because sometimes people think that it's just a discursive event, it's actually an exhibition, or what we say seminars exhibition, and it's important to know that the starting point of this entire project was a series of intensive conversations with three artists, Sara van der Heide, Chong Ang, and Falco Pisano, together with Camilla Sposati. So we had for a long time a series of conversations about reinterpreting, recontextualizing Roland Barthes' text to seminars. So we thought it was interesting to discuss with each other how can we update, how can we rethink this specific text, and what does that text mean for the current situation of education. I will say something about Barthes to give you an understanding why I thought this text is significant for the discussion that we want to enable. Barthes describes a seminar, as we also say in the text, as a floating, unpredictable rhythm that constantly disrupts or disorients these three spaces that are equally present. So it's not only institution, it's not only text, it's transference. In the Barthesian understanding, there's always a dynamic relationship between the different elements of the triangle. And Barthes also makes us aware what can happen if we focus just specifically on one of these angles. If you focus too much on the angle of the institution, the whole process of thinking might be fixed in a kind of knowledge system. And you see it also in the discourse nowadays, people focus too much on knowledge production, while actually an institution should be about a free thinking process. It should enable an ongoing series of differences. As we have in mind for this project also to activate the seminar, we also invited, parallel to this three artists that produced the initial work, three artists to organize a series of workshops. So Inci, Eviner and Job Koelewijn and René Francisco are invited to organize within the framework of this exhibition intensive workshops. Inci is going to tell a little bit later this evening about her workshop. On the video is a documentation of the previous one, and coming Thursday there will be a presentation that is the outcome of this intensive workshop, and then we will include elements in the display system. So the exhibition is continuing during the series of time. And of course, we think it's important to organize in this whole context a series of discursive events, because we think it's important also to discuss specific elements that are important for thinking about this notion of seminar. The first evening will start from the perspective of institution, but as I said before, not only focus on institution, but being aware of the fact that if we want to rethink the seminar, it always has to be connected with the elements of transference and text. And for this evening, I invited Marijke Hoogenboom to moderate the evening. She will also give a short introduction. Marijke is lector, a research professor at DAS Graduate School in Amsterdam, Amsterdamse Hogeschool voor de Kunsten. So Marijke.
Thank you. The instruction is to put the lights on so that the work can be switched off, because you hear this sound. Yeah. We try again. Will you try again, because the sound is still there? Okay, is that disturbing?
Yes. But you will get accustomed to it.
Yeah. I think it's very disturbing, but okay.
Very disturbing.
So Thank you very much for the kind introduction. As Henk already said, for today, within this triangle of Bart's text, his dedication to the seminar from 1967, actually, 50 years ago, we are singling out this idea of the institution. And I give a short introduction to situate myself, because I'm not from visual arts, but from performing arts, and also maybe to give a little bit an account of developments, thinking, activities that go on around the institution in the Netherlands or in the Low Countries, because I think it's also kind of good to anchor the discussion also later on, also locally, not only internationally. What we are going to do is, after my introduction, we have two artists' presentation. First, Sara, and then Inci. And after the artist presentations, we also have a bit of conversation and take questions, because we are afraid that otherwise in the course of the evening we lose them, and we lose the impulse or the interest to respond directly to what they have been giving to us. So we think after the artist presentations we take a break, and after the break then we really dig into the text of Roland Barthes with the help of Jan Verwoert, and he promised that he does a kind of deep reading, if I understood you well. And then after that we still have at least half an hour of time for conversation. If we think we are done, we are full, we would rather go to the bar and have a glass of wine and continue there, that's also possible, so it's all up to us. To begin with, it's very dark here. Yeah. I think it's actually good to also acknowledge the institutional setting in which we are here. First of all, we are framed by this, let's say, architectural setup, which actually is the architecture of the exhibition, but it's also kind of the rehearsal space of the co-action device that Inci is working on with a group of people. So we're in a working space as well. We are in an arts institute. BAC is known to you from many other contexts. It's an arts institute that has to live in a certain structure. But I think there's also another institute present, which is education. I would guess that the majority of people here are students, whether sent by their teachers or here out of free will, or it's part of a course. So I think it's kind of good to be reflective, or to be at least aware of what is that kind of seminar situation that Henk was trying to sell as a free-floating thing. Maybe it's something else. So, but I don't mind. Was that nasty? No, sorry, I didn't mean to. Can you switch to the screen? Yeah. All right. I took that one sentence, which is of course absolutely not appropriate to his text, but I thought for this setting of the institutional frame, it's good to see what is the kind of minimalist version he says about the institutional part of the seminar. The first, other to the transferiential, and the text is institutional. The institution determines a frequency, a schedule, a site, sometimes a courses. So I think we fulfill all of that. I'm coming from performing arts, but at the same time I'm coming from the field of education. As Henk said, I'm a professor for a very long time in, in the Academy for Theatre and Dance. And also there, in the performing arts, there is an ongoing urgent question about the relation, I really mean the relation between artistic practices and institutional frames. The tensions, the violence, the negotiations, the resistance, and maybe also the alternatives. So I try to give an account of that. So never mind of the tendency to institute everything nowadays. I see the desire to engage actively in freeing yourself from institutional frames, emancipating yourself as an almost human desire that is intrinsic to our lives. This is from my daughter at age 5. So it basically says, you might want to teach, you give people tools to express themselves, and hopefully they smash it right into your face. So speaking from my own practice, I will quickly go through these small 4 perspectives, you could say, that I witness and I also participate in. and I hope that is a fruitful contribution to our discussion later on. So the first one is embracing the crisis. The second one is reclaiming and repoliticizing the institute. The third one is the fantastic institution, and the fourth one is the other institution. For the crisis. You are aware that the elections have just passed. There is a very good chance, although everybody is happy that Wilders didn't make it, that we get a right-wing coalition. And with a right-wing coalition, the neoliberal regime, really the pressure on arts and education will absolutely be reaffirmed, and I promise you it will continue. And I think it's important to remember that in 2011, there was a big crisis in the Netherlands for the first time, when there were these massive budget cuts in the performing arts, up to 40%, that destroyed basically the wealth of our very flexible and I would say also quite unique infrastructure. And art really came in a position of defense to really justify itself. And the rhetorics very much claims that there's a necessity to have more reliability, more impact, more profitability, more relevance, and so on and so on. And the response of the art sector, I don't know whom of you witnessed that, was really very defensive, very much trying to prove that we can give an account of what is expected of us. Also trying to prove that we are resilient. And when the budget cuts have been realized from 2013 to 2016 on, everybody testified to us that we were performing as usual. We were as powerful and as productive as usual, although so much money has been taken away from us. The other crisis that I want to mention in terms of institutions in crisis is the crisis of the university. And the crisis of the university is known in other countries for a very long time. In Holland, it came a bit slow, or maybe we responded a bit slow, and it kind of came to its high point when the University of Amsterdam was occupied for almost 6 months. It was the Maagdenhuisbezetting, and when teachers, students and staff really engaged in Rethink the University. And this rethinking the university, concluded in some very effective and important working groups that were specifically addressing deep democratizing and decentralizing the university, doing diversity, and a rethinking of the finance distribution within the university. So likewise, the university, the performing art, otherwise. For the performing arts, this crisis of the university, not so much the crisis of the arts, has been a big inspiration. And the people with whom I work, foremost a younger generation of artists, responded really to what they saw, what was possible in the university, with a very proactive response. And what we started to do is we're inventing, let's say, other or extra institutions. You could say kind of invented legitimate bodies that you would call, for example, a cultural parliament. This is the image of the Cultuurparlement van de Lage Landen. It's a collaboration with practitioners in Flanders and in Holland, where we were saying we stop responding to politics with what they want to hear from us. We are now exclusively working on defining our own proposals. So the cultural parliament was kind of hijacking the structure of a parliament, but reorganizing it in our own terms and working with a large group of people, up to 100 people, on very true proposals that now still be continued to be not so much a proposal to politics, but a proposal to ourselves. So for me, this is, let's say, in reclaiming and politicizing of at the edge of real politics, but also in a way that you try to fantasize a kind of parallel structure which corresponds with the structure that exists, but which is something completely different. In the course of this politicizing and kind of reclaiming structures that might be useful, we had a growing attention to the backside of the arts. So when we talk of institute, how institutional structures work, we very often talk about the front of what we see, the structures that are visible. But the structures in the back, for example, this is entirely about working conditions of artists, are structures that are very difficult to tackle, very difficult to make visible, and even more difficult to change. I think you have probably seen that in the visual arts there is it's not a petition, it's a real proposal for artists' salaries that is signed by many artists' organizations, but also not signed by specifically museums that refuse to pay artists a honorary. So here in the performing arts, it's the sector itself, again, that responds to a kind of institutional deficit with a real proposal. That brings me to the next step that I was proposing, which is about the fantastic institution. Vivian has seen this slide a couple of days before. I was just on a conference in Buda Kortrijk, where the fantastic institution was the topic, and in a sense to still say that as artists you might claim or desire or change wanting to engage in this institution in different ways, but always with the idea that probably it is an entity that can offer protection, but only if it is not only limited to what is. An entity which can offer protection, but not if it's only limited to what is. So where is the space to imagine the institution otherwise, or to imagine the conditions for artistic practice otherwise? Theater, like education, is a rather heavy structure, which means in theater we are used to organize ourselves in a kind of complex way. We think we need a house. It's a live art, which means it has to respond to a live audience. It makes it a kind of difficult apparatus like education. And this is an image from the master program that I was designing with Ritsa Tenkate in 1995, which now exists like a master, but then was a kind of free institute, you could say. And then it was still possible to design education from a handwritten drawing. That was all there is for a very long time. It was all that was needed to justify the whole operation. And why I'm showing this is that in this idea of the fantastic institution and the idea of starting from scratch, or let's say the illusion that we could start from scratch, was very important. The idea that you could kind of design an utopia which would have nothing to do with what we know. And with Das Arts, that was the name of that institute then, now it's called Das Theater, we were really exercising ignorance, you could say. Ritsat, who had already a career of 25 years, we were exercising ignorance. We were just pretending we do not know what education is. And it worked. But of course, we knew something, but we refused to know. We thought if we want to invent something else, an institution, we have to start from scratch. We have to look for utopia. On the other hand, I would like to state beyond this old image of education that there is presently in the performing arts a big group of younger theater makers that are really simply not interested anymore to work in the existing old, let's say, institution. Not that they go on the street and do community arts, but they are much more, let's say, sophisticated to really look for spaces, private and public, where they can intervene, disrupt with the performative power of theater to do as if. And this is an example from the Flemish artist Sara van Hey, who actually is very much recognized already in the visual arts. She has a performance which is called Lecture for Everyone, and she intervenes with that lecture of 10 minutes in meetings that people have in neighborhood houses, corporations, schools, gemeentes, how do you say this? City councils. So she intervenes in places where people come together to do actually something else than engaging in, let's say, a fictional idea of a speech. And the impact is enormous. I read a short quote from her. People were sometimes shocked and angry by my interventions, but mostly they were touched, appreciating the cut in their daily life reality, where usually there is no time to pause, to imagine, to reflect, or to care. One manager at this high-profile insurance company in Tallinn was giving me as feedback, lecture for everyone is very different to the life in a corporation and all the bullshit that goes on in a corporation. Fake stuff, fake people, people playing roles they think are necessary to play. So actually what is happening here, or what is expressed here, is that this fantastic institution or this fantastic institutional intervention is fiction, but as fiction it reveals actually the fiction of reality. So what fiction is and what reality is something that is very debatable. Yeah. I want to introduce you to Daniel Blanca-Gubay, whom you probably know as a thinker, a theoretician that is based in Brussels. He's from Syrian, Lebanese background. And Daniel speaks a lot about the fantastic institution, and he uses this figure. It's a Möbius strip. It's a kind of mathematic figure, which is a metaphor of a desired flexible relation to an institution where you cannot distinguish anymore inside and outside, within or without, institution, non-institution, reality of fiction, end or beginning. So actually he's proposing this whole idea of opposition, of polarities, is maybe not the most interesting thing to relate to institutions. He has a love for xenofeminism, and I take a quote that he used from a manifesto of xenofeminism, which says, shift, it's a kind of instruction, quote, shift from outside to the inside of the institution, discover of fiction to undercover with fiction, push the institution forward to be freed from the idea of a fixed identity, put a flexible one through fiction. Fiction might be the cover under which some impossible events might be possible to appear. Institutions should not only host fiction, but foremost be hosted by fiction. And here's an exercise. Act as your institution is of different size. Act as if your institution is in another place. Act as if your institution is inhabited by humans and non-humans. So the change of perspective is crucial to the possibility of the fantastic institution. And then last but not least, I would like to come back to education and to some of the kind of present concerns that I have. And this is again from my own practice, while I'm occupied with negotiating, reconciling, renegotiating my position within the institution. And what you see here is the site of the new place of the graduate school in Amsterdam, which is a brick building. Yeah, where is it? Here. And you can see how this building is over the years since the 60s in a changing environment. So while we are happy that we got the institution that we battled for, which is an incredible building where we have a lot of freedom and you could say really a privileged situation for art education, our environment has drastically changed. So we are in a neighborhood actually where we are surrounded by buildings for the creative industry, commercial buildings, and where this area has an incredible impact on the gentrification of the neighborhood that is beyond. And also the building that we are in has a history, something that we forgot when we went into the building. But it has been the laboratory of shell technologies for 100 years. So actually we are building our good intentions on very, very polluted ground. And this is why I put this quote from Andrea Fraser here that warns us, we perform the city on behalf of our own subjective positions while the financial regimes move on without us. So I would like to stop here and use these couple of ideas that I gave for the discussion later on and see how also the contributions of the artists and Jan will resonate to that. Thank you very much. We continue with Sara Senji-Chang. Where would you like to be? As there wasn't a biography of Sara in the exhibition, and I heard it's now placed on the website, I read it to you quickly because I'm not sure if you're all familiar with who she is and what her work is. Sara is an artist whose practice consists of political and poetic interventions drawing series, performances and films through which she proposes a more inclusive modernity. In 2016, Sara was an artist in residence at Wiel's Contemporary Art Center. She's currently part of Piet Zwart Institute MFA tutorial team in Rotterdam. She has recently participated in the first Asia Biennale, the 5th Guangzhou Triennial, Guangzhou 2015 until 2016, the School of Kiev, Leipzig class, the seminar Politics of Form, Kiev Biennial, and so on and so on. Sarah, forgive me if I don't conclude it. It's a long list. You're all over the place, but now you're here.
What to do with the other laptop? If I sit down, will people be able to see me? Or should I keep holding my laptop?
Can you see her when she sits down? Maybe
Not really, no.
Is it fine with you, Sarah? We can use this one. Is it okay?
Ah, yeah.
It's much more comfortable.
Yeah.
So we're flexible.
Yeah. Nee, want hij loopt gewoon. Maar hij staat niet nu op deze. Hello. Well, Henk Slager, thank you for the invitation. And Bach, I really want to thank the whole production team of Bach. I think they did an amazing job for producing the work upstairs. I don't know if everyone has seen it because, well, it's funny to talk about the work which is upstairs and yeah. But how can I start? I mean, Henk invited me and Falk and Chong some time ago to, I mean, he briefly talked about it. But I had this idea to start a work, and the title wasn't sure set then, but I wanted to set up a work which will collect stories of mothers who were forced to give their child away, either by pressure of society or their family or the state or church. And because these stories are very personal stories, but actually at the same time they are universal stories. And so I had these ideas for already a couple of years, and I didn't know how to make this into a work or how this would turn out. And at the same time, I had this idea to combine it with the image of an orrery, a 17th century orrery, where you see, it's like a box. It's not larger than this, and it's actually represents the universe, and it's like a very simplified model of the universe, and you see balls rotating, and they represent the sun and the moon and the earth. And I had this idea in my head for a long time, and then Henk came and said, "I have this text." So so then I started to work on it, and so this what we see upstairs is actually the first version or the first phase of the project, which I want to continue, and I also want to think of how it can develop in different forms or different. So in a way, it's not set that it always has to be a wooden box or that it always has to be an interview with a mother. It can be also an interview with scholars, or it can be different. But I wanted to start here, also because I'm born in Korea myself, and so what I present upstairs is an interview. Is actually a transcript based on an interview with a Korean mother who was actually more or less forced to give her child away, and so this will continue to grow over the times, and what can I what else can I say? I was, of course, interested. That's why you see the mountain. I was interested in, and that's why I also think it's interesting in relation to the text. That I was interested in how can it be different than just how can I introduce a different way of thinking than just this rational way of thinking. So I came up with this figure of the mountain, which can, in a way, provide answers or give ways of seeing which we normally do not include. And so for this work, I spoke with many people, and some people are not in the conversation upstairs, but and so I weaved them into I gave them a place in the voice of the mountain. And let me see. What did I? So what I thought was really important, that I wanted to give this time a voice to the mothers who are often being overseen or actually being silent in this in this difficult trajectory of adoption, and this is how how I did it. I find it difficult because again, like upstairs is the work, and here so I don't know how much further I should tell about the work itself.
If you can elaborate a little bit, because if you listen to the text, if you have seen the work, if you listen to the text that comes to you through the different voices, then you can elaborate a little bit what kind of voices are there, because you portray voices that are not heard, like the voice of the mother.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is this spiritual voice that actually has a wisdom that is not heard, but then there is also the voice of an authority. So you're also claiming or kind of putting different positions into one space. And can you maybe elaborate a little bit on those different positions and what that voice of the authority is, what you think that these other voices are kind of dialoguing with?
Yeah. Of course, like it's clear that there's for the work, there's like more or less the bad agency, and that is the adoption agency, the American adoption agency, which represents not just like only the American adoption agency, but also the Korean government. So and indeed, it's like clearly divided. Like there's the authority, the position of the authority, who remains anonymous as well. And I wanted to also, for the work, I wanted to remain that the woman's voice was also anonymous, but at the same time it's deeply personal, of course. So it's a combination of like the American adoption agency, the Korean government, and people who are just benefiting from this exchange and this mechanism, actually. Sure. Yeah.
And the other thing that I was interested in is that you have chosen, if we look back at Bart's text and this triangle between these different elements, you've chosen for the oral, you could say, the oral text.
Yeah.
How do you say the oral sound? Not for the written text, it's not a transcript of the conversation. Why is the orality of the voice so important? What is the position of the, let's say, the oral history in relation to the written history?
Yeah, I mean that maybe also has to do that I think mainly women's voices have been more or less been silenced as well, and to actually say like, okay, now actually the women's voice becomes an institution, and by collecting individual stories, they become a voice and they become an institution. And I think it's important that it is different than written text, or that it's so I'm still also like how to continue, what is the afterlife of the work, and there is already a website, but like will it be videos, or how do I collect this the interviews, how do I archive them, and I think I want to maintain this fluidity of the oral history, and look for a form which is different than making other archives, you know, and more files, more documents, and so I think the women's voice, or the mother's voice, is coming more through this way of presenting. That's why for me it was important to use for this choose for this form. Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I didn't want to state it's in the exhibition because, but the idea is to really prolong this and to maybe continue this to talk with mothers who gave their child away. I already spoke with an Irish mother before, but the idea is really to continue this for maybe. I mean, I cannot say the rest of my life, but like so it will slowly. I mean, this is just really like the baby phase of this project, and I'm careful to announce like it will become an institution. But the idea is to really that it will slowly grow, and that it will really become a collection of these stories, and in a way, with all the mothers I spoke, and also the adoptees, because over the years and it's like something I for decades I've been speaking with adoptees and also mothers in this position. What is really recurrent that all these stories are actually deeply traumatic, but at the same time universal, and for the women who I spoke with, it was incredibly important to be able to tell their story, because they said to me they were always so ashamed to actually tell their story, and they have been always felt so guilty that they did this. And I think I can imagine, or I can envision that in a way these mothers will be linked, although they will never meet each other, because most of these women they come really from poor situations. And like the mother I spoke with in Korea, she hardly spoke English, so that's why it's also translated into English. But like they don't have these opportunities to. But so in a way there is this imaginary link between these mothers, and I think this was already very to speak with them, and for me, and also for the mothers itself was already in a way healing. I think so. It has a different life, I think. Yeah.
Last thing maybe that interests me is that for those that have seen it and for the performers that have heard it, something about oral history or oral history storytelling is really the way that the knowledge that the mother possesses, or any other talent, is very specific, and it comes to us in a very different way, that speaks in a very different way to our senses. And what was confusing me was really the voice of the mother, because as you said, you needed to translate it into English, but it's a very generic English mother tongue speech.
Yeah.
So what was your consideration to?
Okay, I can elaborate, because
Specificity that you're so keen about, the specificity of the Korean situation from the sound of the voice there.
I made it a very clear decision to direct her into this way, because to all the people who I asked to read the text before, they were crying, and because it was, and so it was already very dramatic by itself, and so I wanted to be able to have visitors to listen to it till the end. And I think if it would have been really like acting or pretending to be the mother, it would have I think it would have been quite more difficult to read. But it was also something else. I do really believe that this story, although it was really it is a real story, and it's like almost literally of what she has said, but that does represent this 200 to or 300,000 other mothers who were in the same position. So it is, therefore I choose to make it more generic indeed. Yeah.
I think it's important to be aware that with this voice, you kind of introduce another institution, which is the kind of so-called universal English language. There is a saying, if you don't speak English, you're not an artist. If you don't speak English, you're not a citizen. So there's this dominance of the language in this world, and so I think
Yeah.
it's something interesting to
Yeah.
reflect what that does and the clash
Yeah.
and the confrontation of the content and the context of the work.
No, absolutely. I mean, it was a difficult decision, but I think I don't know who speaks Korean here, but yeah. So then I would have to work with subtitles or like in an opera, and so yeah. And I didn't find a proper solution, and that one way there needs to be an abstraction also. I think I didn't. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, for me it needed some kind of abstraction, and it turned out this way. But again, I think it can really grow into, it can. The next phase can be in a different form as well.
Other questions from these wonderful people taking part in the seminar?
Hi, Vivian. Hello.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about. Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay. The absence of the questioner is quite obvious in the installation when we're listening to the mother. So your position as the person who's questioning the mother isn't made evident or explicit to the person who comes upon the installation. However, you're the author of the texts that sit aside the installation. Can you talk a little bit about how you're negotiating your own position with respect to the material as an artist, having to do a certain amount of abstraction and yet being deeply invested in the questions and the issues that are raised by the work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very obvious that I'm the one who wrote the text, I'm the one who made the drawings, I'm the one who had all these conversations with many more people than were just listed now. And I think that's also like this idea, like to claim to be an institution. I think it's like maybe a bit of a bold statement. Okay, I'm just gonna buy this website domain, and I'm an institution. And I think that's how easy it can be. And I think I can. I have the right to say, like, okay, in this part I'm more visible than in other parts, but yet I agree. Like and that's why the website is still quite empty, because I'm indeed like still thinking about like how to archive this and how to what kind of form does it take after the installation will be taken down. And so these indeed are questions I'm thinking, but so now I invited Agnieszka Polska to be the narrator of the mountain, but she was also she also contributed to in some way. But again, it's like in the baby phase, and I think it can expand and include more authors, people, and ideas.
Anybody else? Would you like to add something, or you decided not to speak about another work?
I mean, I think we can do later if I mean, I think that's
Maybe you can speculate a little bit about the next phase, what kind of people you want to include, because you talk about scholars and academics. What kind of people?
I didn't say academics. Well, now I spoke with church people also who were very active in the post-adoption services in Korea, and they have a very specific role because, in one hand, the church played a very strange role in this by setting up these adoptions, but at the same time, they also take care of these post-adoption services. So. It can go. Yeah, and I spoke with activists, and there's a very active Danish academic. So he's an academic. Would like to continue a conversation with him. So yeah, can go several directions. Okay.
So we transfer to Inci Eviner. If you have seen our video here on the co-action device, it's an account of a work from 2013, if I'm right. And as I said, it's recreated with students from Utrecht and scenography for the sake of this exhibition, and it will be performed on Thursday, I believe. Yeah, also fine arts. Inci comes from Istanbul in Turkey. Her body of work is comprised of multi-layered pieces that originate from drawings, ranging from drawings and video to performative and collaborative practices. She explores politics of desire, space, and subjectivity and its potentiality. As an artist, she's aware of the traumas with which we live, with which demand a new kind of listening and witnessing. She holds a PhD in fine art from Mimar Sinan Fine Arts University, Istanbul, and has been a lecturer at the Faculty of Art and Design at the Kadir Has University, Istanbul since 2011. I would like to read a short quote from the prize that you just got because it's beautiful. Prize from the Sharjah Biennial 13, which was last year. Inci Eviner has explored the perspective of women, processes, and organizations, and the formation of such activities for 40 years. That's really well. Thank you very much.
Let's start the watch today. Shows a boys underground video. voice underground. In another country and in present tense, oppressive governance with an anti-freedom agenda has invented fictional enemies to cover up its failures. These enemies are located outside the country borders and are intangible to the extent that digital technologies cannot reach them. The enemies are entirely outside our knowledge domain. The fear is so high that all controversies and discrepancy are eliminated and everyone goes back to their safe shelter. Another obvious result is the elimination of all possible opposition. People voluntarily delete their memories to be able to endure this situation. People who lost their past, childhood, and incongruous longing included, begin a new life disconnected from this current world. Consequently, they drag themselves into a new search once they realize they are not able to endure the violence of forgetting and of loss. They are forced to rediscover their existence through finding a shelter underground. The only emotion they can recognize is solitude, and the only other tool they have at their disposal, the limited number of art history books. As related by an inhabitant, he or she speaks about the situation. We never felt as lonely as this. We never crave another world that's different than ours. All our foreign relations were broken, and therefore we forgot our universal values. It was impossible to understand what was happening. Our faces disappeared from the mirrors in a world where no others exist. The past and the future fell into the well of forgetting. We did not know how to prove our existence in a reality where the memory and the other were terminated. In order to remember, we had to find images, symbols, and allegory and expression that would make a community out of us. The most appropriate way to do so was to utilize the opportunities offered to us by the art of painting and find new nouns and visuals for redefining objects and our behaviors. We had to first and foremost think how and through what we would define ourselves. Painters and poets took on this work and began to craft a recalibration of the visual and the verbal. This craft of the visual, verbal, would become the guidebook for understanding what was going on in the country. The following situations had to be defined immediately: justice, laughter, cloth, headcraft, turban, family, institution, woman, drum, soldier, nurse, death, sculpture, separation, jealousy, hearing, mosque, Atatürk Culture Center, Persian vase, law, sophistry, etc. Joseph Beuys was one from the world of art and literature from whom we asked for help, and it seemed wise to be benefit from his healing and creative powers. This is the accompanied text, what I read right now, and also it is difficult to read in this size of the video. So I want to explain some labels. It's possible to show again as a still. Of course, you should imagine this video 5 meter, 6 meter as an installation. Right now, I present this work in the Sharjah Biennale right now. There are some labels because, as I mentioned before, some writers, painters, artists, poets working for to create some new identity, but they have only some titles of artworks. For example, Richard Hamilton, you know, there is the family, near the family over there, the very iconic painting, Richard Hamilton, pop art, American pop art. Is the title of his painting. Okay. Maybe later I will back to this. And on the corner, up the corner, there is a woman is shaking. She's Antigone. There are two Antigones here. Yes, thank you. There is the label next to Antigone. I do. I deny nothing. Antigone'dan, this is from the Antigone'dan, just one replic. And the next one, unlashed. And the animal, there is a references to the coyote. Persian was coyote. As you know, the very famous performance of the Joseph Beuys, I like America, likes America, likes America me. And the Persian was coyote. It's referring to the coyote Joseph Beuys. Determine the losses over there up to Antigone. Strive to be a whole person. It means that this is very important quote from the Joseph Beuys. Making a proposal for the Atatürk Culture Center. You see over there. Maybe I need something to show. Yes, sorry. And there is over there the typical Turkish family, and the label. Just what is it that makes today home so different, so appealing? It's from the Richard Hamilton painting. And there is another, yes. The Antigone. And here is the here is the Adnan and Sırma talking each other and asking, the label say it, are we animals or are we human beings? And the mosque here, Sultanahmet's mosque, the title is House for Making Faith. And here there is a family again, Turkish family, typical Turkish family. The label is Matter of Turban. All these actually, the words, the sentences, and it showed us the gap in between the image and the written. Dissemination of ideas here. This verse belongs to Joseph Beuys. Searching the nature of woman is here. The label is here. And another very very well-known words of Joseph Beuys: how you explain pictures to that hair is here. Here is the referring to these figures. Study on countable and uncountable affection, and here sensual misunderstanding, and here again Antigone, philosophy on death. Here take place here. Akeme, I said. Yes, that's all. Maybe yes. Delacroix. It's from Delacroix. Practicing liberty leading to people. Here. Practicing liberty leading to people. I want to this kind of in section. I want to show what happened in this society. So they are trying to find a way to be exist in the underground. So just as I mentioned in my text, they need something to connect the world, to define themselves. So art and many art institutional inspire them to find some new identity. And talking about a little bit the process, how I produce this kind of first. The drawings is very based for me because the drawings is enable me what happened, understand what happened in my mind. It's because it's quite gestural and quite fast. So imagination, to discover my imagination and to inspire many things, and to discover my mind. So it is very productive process. And also the other step and other stage, it's very connect to other kind of tools, other kind of art production, as like performance and digital technology. So there are many layers here. The first drawings, I started working with drawings, and then process of the drawings, I can figure out some ideas, pick up some ideas, and then start the planning of the performance. It's kind of performative, much better to say. And coming to the greenback studio, and after the video shooting, I am using some composite process, digital process. So all these tools working as like a studio. So interlock with each other, and then of course it takes long time. And I have never called that the project. It is the kind of this is process. But at the beginning, I need some clues, some images in my mind. At the same time, text writing. It is very important for me. This is the accompanying text. I call that writing, reading, and drawing, and also digital process and performative process, and working other players, and there are many layers. This combine this video, and so actually imagination is another important factor for me. Imagination and also collaborative work. Working is collaborative, and co-action device. How working co-action is very similar way. Actually, the different studio connect each other, and so my artistic practice and also my teacher experience quite close each other. inspired a lot Gezi uprising. Maybe you remember. That time, many young people occupied a park, and this experience it's very crucial for Turkey, the history of Turkey, because the protesto, actually this protesto aim was something, created some freedom and occupied the park. It's the symbolizer of the park, this uprising. They are acting inside of this park. They created some society. It's all process so natural. It's happened very naturally. And after Gezi protest, we come together many people and discussing about the institution, especially education. And in Turkey, education since 1980 has never constitution. So every time is the open up the all power or government. So it's quite still quite very fragile. So we decided to create some kind of space for students for research, for to come together to create some kind of society in acting in the tools of art tools, activating some concept and notion, and to open up to all each other using same items and using some stages, working together. Maybe it's a kind of searching of examining of this is the how can be community in the tool of art, using tool of arts actually. So 40 days, 40 students come into the device, and then we start working for working Istanbul Biennial in the Greek school mezzanine. And I set up a huge stage, but inspired come from my own works actually, my imagination. So I offered the students as a studio. Different background studio come here and negotiate and discussion their problems, and then some of them create their own workshop. They invite the other people, and so interlocutors many workshop each other. So the small studios, and of course the very important the craftsmanship, and also shooting video and many things come together. In the end of this situation, we did some series of performative lecture. We gave some series of performative lecture. It is acting, it is this process like an educational methodology process, but it's totally open up to people. At the beginning we did the open call and invite many people, many young people or old people, it doesn't matter. And then it is the kind of, it is very necessary to be survive actually in that position, in that condition. And also it is the way of the resisting. And still I continue to realize the co-action device in somewhere, because the methodology, the art education must be the border of the institution, because it's must in the institution or in the state, in the university, in the fine arts academy, whatever. It's open to be concrete. It's open to be frozen education. So it needs some more space, some more freedom, and also socially engaged. And yeah, it must be in the street, whatever. So co-action device is kind of my teaching experience and my artistic practice somehow relate each other actually. In the end, of course, this is the unique. I belong to artists. To me, is a art of art, but the process, it is similar to our workshop, and also I am teaching in Federal University. As a teacher, my methodology is similar co-action device actually. I call that performative research. Run. Yes, in the co-action, mostly we are using as a method imitation, reiteration, and quote. So this is activated some concepts, and so discovered some the possibilities of these concepts. And in my work, and also there are many references to art of work. At the same time, you see some kind of struggle of the how can deal with all this situation. So rather than utopia, this is kind of proposal or statement. I can call that. And the co-action device at the same time combine many different workshop, many different studio. Come together, and then at the beginning there is no any idea or the very different multiple frames, and then go through this process. Students can discover their own methodology. So topic, I don't know, the co-action device is quite up to now. It's based on the research because of that. So it is to work out right now. I don't know if it's the topic or this topic, but we need some to create a space, freedom, free zone. Imagination. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I would like to talk through the metaphor. Actually, it is the obvious reference to many things, many concrete problems, whatever in Turkey. At the same time, maybe in the world.
Maybe just again about voice, because you have this kind of touching sentence where you said you are asking Joseph Beuys for help.
Yes.
What is it that Joseph Beuys brings?
Voice. Yes, we have a problem with voice because voice, what he proposed actually, I find is the artistic statement and the reality. I'm afraid there is a very huge gap. So this is, I guess, the Joseph Beuys is here. It's kind of fantasy. So of course, just we have left it a few art of verse, and the boys come to Turkey, the reverse is a reverse, and then it's like a verse. So there are some iconic figures in here. It is not enough to build up to some identity. Actually, it is an Maybe it is the part of the discussion of the are we European, part of European or not, actually. When I was childhood, every time I hear that this discussion. Turkey is the part of Europe or not, but we are, my generation, many people burn into the reading and literature and burn many beautiful art of works, reproduction, of course, just only. So, artist Joseph Beuys is at the same time the huge shaman and healer. So it is very natural to ask to help.
Other questions from you or remarks that you would like to say to Inci?
Okay, just a general remark about you talked about the space of the biennial as a site of production that you negotiate with your fellow producers.
Sorry?
You use the site of the biennial as a site for production.
Yeah, commission production by
Yeah, but also in your normal educational work, you also use your academia, I think, as a site.
art and design project.
How much of the work I was wondering goes into negotiating with the boundaries of those sites? Do you regularly have or engage in different boundaries of the boundaries that are set by the site itself? Do you stay inside of the biennial or outside of the biennial?
No public streets, just for because it creates its own world, So of course in the museum or the biennial spaces, the huge spaces, I want to show it. Not the public space, of course. Or this one. Are we talking about this, my work?
No, this is.
Oh, you mean the collection device in the Istanbul Biennial?
You saw the one with the video on the so you can see the presentation.
Are there other questions or remarks? Okay. And I would propose we have a break. Thank you very much, Inci.
Okay, thank you.
We have a short break until 9 o'clock, so it's 10 minutes. I hope the bar is open. Can people bring drinks in? Okay, bye.